I'd like to call to order the July 15th, 2024 meeting of the Town of Kiawah Island Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm Frank Cassidy. I'm the chairman of the board. In addition to myself, the board members who will hear your cases today are Larry Rosenfeld, Lynn O'Leary, Jay Lewis, Morris Hannon, and attending virtually is Phil Adams. Staff members present here today are Patria St. John and Dan Vincent from our planning staff, and Boone Aiken, who is our legal counsel. Our case rulings from this and any BZA meeting are available for public review and inspection during normal business hours at the town hall. Since this meeting is being conducted virtually on the YouTube, please be reminded that in order to obtain a clean and clear record for persons listening live and for the benefit of our court reporter, it's important that all participants not speak over one another. If you'd like to speak, please do so by raising your hand, and I'll recognize you and you can proceed to the podium. I'd like to briefly describe the workings of the BZA. It's a quasi-judicial body established to interpret and grant relief from the zoning ordinance. The Board of Zoning Appeals has jurisdiction over three types of cases: appeals, variances, and special exceptions. Appeals are heard regarding administrative actions or decisions by the zoning administrator or staff. Variances may be granted when strict application of the zoning ordinance would cause an unnecessary hardship. This board's actions must be based on specific standards as contained in the SC Local Government Planning Enabling Act of 1994 and the Town of Kiawah Island Zoning Ordinance. Special exceptions allow the board to permit uses if certain conditions are contained in the zoning ordinance are met. A simple majority vote of the quorum present is required to grant a variance or to overturn the decision of the zoning administrator in an appeal, or to grant a special exception. Because today's hearing is a public fact-finding meeting, we are in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act and SC Code 6-29-70. 15 days prior to this hearing, an announcement was printed in the Post and Courier. A sign was posted on or near the designated properties, and a notice was mailed to applicants or representatives, to residents within 500 feet of the applications, and to parties of interest. Persons, organizations, and the news media that have requested declaration of our meeting have also been notified. The Freedom of Information Act does not require notification of anyone other than the applicant and the parties of interest. Our purpose today is for interested persons to be heard in order to assist the board in gathering evidence pertinent to each case. If the members of the BZA feel the need for further information to clarify a case, the board has the authority to subpoena witnesses. In addition to your testimony, our board has been presented with written information submitted to the staff by the applicant or their agent for each case. This information is now considered to be evidence and is entered into the permanent record of this body. It's assumed that it is complete, true, and accurate. Also, we've been presented data assembled by the staff for the purpose of clarifying the location and the effects on surrounding properties. Our board is empowered to approve with conditions, or deny your requests. In granting a variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals may attach to it such conditions regarding the location, character, or other features of the proposed building, structure, or use as the board may consider advisable to protect established property values in the surrounding area or to promote the public health, safety, or general welfare. We are also authorized to defer a case should there be a need to obtain additional information. If an applicant's request is approved for a special exception, a variance, or an appeal of a decision by the zoning administrator, they go to the Town of Kiawah Island to apply for permits. Variances and special exceptions granted by the BZA are valid for 12 months after this meeting. However, if an applicant's request is disapproved and they wish to appeal the decision of this board concerning their case, appeals must be addressed to the circuit court. SC Code 6-29-823 states that the appeal must be filed by the applicant within 30 days after the decision of the board is mailed to them. Failure to file an appeal within the time limit deprives the court of jurisdiction to hear the matter. Because this is a quasi-judicial body, everything said in this meeting must be complete, true, and accurate. All of the information provided to the BZA is considered evidence, and this board may certify contempt of circuit court if false statements are made, either in writing or orally. For each case, following presentations by staff and the applicant, we'll call individuals one by one to approach the podium to share public comments. Remember to speak into the microphone so that the record is clear and accurate. Also be reminded that all persons who wish to speak shall direct their comments to the board, not the applicant, other speakers, or parties of interest. So we will now swear in everyone who will or may be speaking today, staff, applicants, and members of the public for both cases. So I'd ask anyone who may wish to speak today to stand, and Mr. Aiken will administer the oath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. We can do this all at one time if that works. If y'all would mind raising your right hand for me, please. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Boone. I shall now call case BZA 24-000010 at 39 Burroughs Hall. Staff will present facts pertinent to the case. I shall then call the applicant to address the case. The applicant should stand at the podium, state their name and business address for the record before presenting testimony. Although I didn't call on any members of the public who wish to speak, and they shall follow the same procedure for identifying themselves, including their name and address. These comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. The applicant will also have the opportunity for rebuttal after public comments are made. So Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the BZA and audience members, my name is Daniel Vincent. I'm a Planner 1 for Town of Kiawah, and I will be presenting these two cases today. Our first case being heard is case number BZA 24-000010. The applicant, Alex Liebengood, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Okay, Liebengood, representing the property owners Gregory and Elaine Jaroba.
Daniel, our screens are not, do not have the presentation.
Not on the.
Just making sure we're paying attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we
Okay.
can read twice.
All right, so continuing, Alex Liebengood, representing the property owners Gregory and Elaine Jaroba, are requesting a variance for the reduction of the required 25-foot front setback for approximately 27 square feet, reduction of the 15-foot side setback for approximately 102 square feet, and the reduction of the 30-foot OCRM encroachment setback for approximately 60 square feet, for a total encroachment of 189 square feet. This property is located at 39 Burroughs Hall. TMS number is 264-02-00-059. This is located in the R1 zoning district. Adjacent properties to the east, west, and to the south are also located in the R1 zoning district. Subject property is currently undeveloped, and it sits adjacent to a critical area to the marsh on the south. Subject property is approximately 8,273 square feet in total size. Of that, 7,737 square feet are highlands, and about 536 square feet are marshlands. Town of Kiawah Island Land Use Planning and Zoning Ordinance, pursuant to Section 12-65, R1 Residential District, requires a 25-foot front setback a 15-foot side setback, and a 30-foot rear setback on the OCRM critical line. The subject property has a maximum allowable lot coverage of 40%. Here is a zoning map of the subject property. An aerial view from Charleston County GIS, and a high-resolution zoomed-in aerial view. A site visit was conducted on June 28th, 2024, at which staff took a few pictures of the site. Here's the front of the property. Adjacent property across the street. Adjacent properties to the left and the right. The rear of the property. So the applicant's proposed plans include a new single-family residence. The applicants include, in their plans, they include a staircase and a porch that encroaches 25 feet into the front setback by approximately 6 feet 8 inches. There is a 5-foot administrative relief of 5 feet in our Town of Kiawah Island Land Use and Planning Zoning Ordinance and Section 1264, stating uncovered decks or stair landings to building entrances may extend up to 5 feet into any required setback. The staircase encroaches approximately 11 square feet. The applicant's plans also include a covered porch which extends into the required front foot setback by approximately 1 foot 6 inches. And that total square foot encroachment is approximately 16 square feet. On the side of the property, the applicant's plans include a 3-foot encroachment into the required 15-foot side setback to the east. It also includes a 4-foot encroachment for the HVAC stand. And that total square footage encroachment for both of those is 102 square feet. At the rear of the property, the applicant's plans include an uncovered deck which encroaches into the 30-foot rear OCRM critical line setback by approximately 9 feet 8 inches. The Town of Kiawah Island Land Use and Planning Zoning Ordinance, pursuant to sections 1264 in regards to setbacks, states, quote, uncovered decks may extend up to 5 feet into any required rear yard setback, unquote.
Gesundheit.
The proposed deck extends approximately 4 feet 8 inches beyond the 5-foot administrative relief setback. Additionally, the applicant's proposed plans include 3 separate cantilevered structures extending a maximum of 4 feet 8 inches into that required 30-foot rear OCRM critical line setback. The footprint of the proposed rear deck sits approximately 20 feet from the OCRM critical line at its nearest point. The applicant has submitted to the Kiawah Island Architectural Review Board. The proposed project received approval for encroachment into the rear and the front setback on April 4th, 2024, stating, quote, given the loss of highland area to critical line movement, the front and rear setback requests are approved. The proposed project also received approval for the encroachment into the side setback on May 15th, 2024, stating the board approves the additional variance to the ARB setback on the right side of the property. We'll move on to the variance approval criteria. So criteria A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. There may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property due to the existing OCRM critical line at the rear of the lot. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "This lot is 43% smaller than the average lot in the vicinity out of 178 lots. It is also one of only 2 lots in the area that is small and has an acute angle at the rear. The OCRM line makes this even more acute, making the buildable area a difficult shape to develop." Criteria B, these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. These conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. The subject property is in the R1 zoning district. Adjacent properties along Burroughs Hall are also located in the R1 zoning district. Existing structures in the vicinity may or may not have similar encroachments. Criteria C, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The application of this ordinance to the property may not prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the subject property, as the subject property is currently undeveloped. For the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "These conditions would not prohibit, but they do unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property due to the small size and unusual shape." Criteria D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to the subject property or the public good, and the character of the zoning district would not be harmed by the granting of this variance. The authorization of this variance may not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent properties or the public good. The proposed additions encroach minimally into the required setbacks and may or may not be visible to neighbors. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "This would not be of any detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of this variance. The letter of approval from the ARB indicates this agreement," end quote. Criteria E, the BZA shall not grant a variance, the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in a zoning district, to extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. Granting of this variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in this zoning district, extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or change the zoning district boundaries. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "This would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted, or extend an existing non-conforming use, or change the boundaries on the zoning map," end quote. Criteria F, the fact the property may be used more profitably should a variance be granted may not be considered grounds for a variance. The BZA may not consider profitability when considering this variance request. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "Profitability is not the reason for this variance application," end quote. The need for this, criteria G, the need for this variance shall not be the result of the applicant's own actions. The need for this variance may not be the result of the applicant's own actions. Per Charleston County records, the property was acquired by Gregory and Elaine Droba in 2002. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "The applicant has not acted in a way to cause the need for this variance," end quote. Criteria H, granting of this variance will not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest, nor will not adversely affect the other properties in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit of intent and purposes of these regulations. Granting of this variance may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest, may not adversely affect other properties in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, or purposes of these regulations. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "This would not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest and would not interfere with the purposes of this regulation." The letter of approval from the ARB indicates their agreement, end quote. And last, criteria I, granting of this variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance. Granting of this variance may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "This would not conflict with the comprehensive plan and the mitigations made to the encroachments show good faith to meet the proposed, to meet the purposes of this ordinance," end quote. Should the Board of Zoning Appeals consider approval of this variance request, planning staff requests the following conditions of approval, which is the applicant shall provide an as-built survey post-construction to ensure the encroachments match the proposed plans. This concludes staff's review.
Dan, I'll ask the applicant about this also, but in the applicant's letter, in the paragraph on the right side, issues, they talk about a covenant setback and the town's zoning setback. This is the first time I've encountered a covenant setback, and I don't understand what that is.
I'm not aware of the covenant, what the covenant setback would be. I know different neighborhoods and places on Kiawah do require lots to be certain sizes, and they may require different setbacks.
Yes, Mr. Levin, when he comes up.
Okay.
Other questions for Dan?
Dan, on the OCRM, what was the most recent, what year are we looking at?
On the survey.
Yeah. And the second part of that is, what was it in 2002, if you have any comparison?
We may be able to look at the recorded plat, but it will not tell you what was put in 2002 exactly.
Okay.
I think that question needs further development. The question is, when they bought the house in 2002, and now we're looking at 22 years later, the encroachment from the OCRM line is obviously marching continually because it's happening pretty much everywhere on Kiawah. How much has it moved in the last 2 years? How much has moved in the last 5 years? How much has moved in the last 10 years? And what is the situation if, assuming that it's going to continue to move, where the architect stated that there will be no ground facilities constructed over the existing OCRM line, they'll just cantilever everything. But what happens if the line moves further past where they've already built? So I'd like to know the speed before we do anything. I'd like to know the speed at which it's encroaching and have some general idea, perhaps, Ms. Lieberthal has more information to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And just for the record, if I could ask board members when you're speaking, if you could speak into your microphone for me.
Sorry.
Just for the, thank you.
It was him, not me, right?
Yep, thank you.
Overachiever.
So on your screen now, we can see the recorded plat for this lot, which is recorded in November 6th of 1979. In this plat, it looks like they delineate the marsh from the highlands. 39 Burrows is right here. In terms of what it was in 2002, I don't have access to those records. Maybe the applicant may, but all staff is able to figure out is what it was in 1979.
And you said that's the
Today.
most recent OCRM?
Not this one. This is the original plat.
Original one. When
This
was the
is-
most recent one done?
I don't have a date on it in my files. If the applicant would be happy to come up here and talk about it.
It has to be within a certain time limit.
With the build.
Yes.
Was it 3 years? if I
It's,
remember, Frank?
I don't
5.
recall what the limit is. We'll ask the applicant to address that. Other questions for Dan? Okay, thank you, Dan. Mr. Liebengood, I think you're up.
Hello, my name is Alex Leibengood, and I am the architect for this project representing Greg Droba and Elaine Markowski at 39 Burroughs Hall. I work for Dolphin Architects and Builders, and like I said, I'm the architect. Happy to address your questions. One of them was the date of the most recent survey. It was fall of 2023. For Kiawah Island development, all surveys have to be within 1 year of activity from the time that the application was put in.
By chance, do you have an overlay of what it was like when they purchased the lot and then overlay that latest?
We do not.
Survey?
To our knowledge, there was not a survey done in that time range, and we don't have any record of that documentation. So
So when you're saying that you've lost X amount of space, you don't really have anything to document that, or you're just looking at it from where it was in 1977?
all we have is the original plat versus where we are today. So that's the advancement that we're considering.
As a matter of our regulations, the only thing we can deal with, however, I'm directing this to Boone, I think, is the current OCRM line. Is that correct?
Correct.
When you designed the house, why didn't you design it so it wouldn't go over the line?
We've actually put a lot of legwork into addressing that. And basically, we've tried to fit a 4-bedroom home. The Markowskis, like we've heard, has owned this lot for 22 years. This will be their primary residence. They'll be moving into this home full-time. They like to make sure they can have their kids there and have a guest. So it really came down to just fitting the program of the house within the smallest footprint that we possibly could. We've actually eliminated a lot of outdoor space. Like you see, the back deck is quite small. It can only fit a 4-person table. And that's mostly because of the size of the lot and the setbacks that we have. With that in mind, we are very sensitive to the marsh line. We as a company, and the Markowskis in particular, they're moving here because of the natural environment. And we are looking to limit the amount of impact we have on the natural environment as much as possible, as well as preserve the natural beauty of the neighborhood. So with that in mind, we have designed the structure, even though it's going to cost more, those cantilevered elements to preserve the ground plane where it is and not encroach. And so we've taken extra steps to try and mitigate that
There
encroachment.
in the back is still encroaching in 2 sections. Did you consider eliminating one of the decks?
We have considered eliminating one of the decks.
Are you open to eliminating one of the decks?
Not necessarily the deck, but we're considering pulling back, if we can't get approval to this day, is considering the sunroom removal, which would mean the only place they have to eat would be their dining room.
The one on the left side of the photograph, I don't realize which one that one.
So
The one
the-
that's deeper, I noticed there's a bay prior to it going out onto a deck. It appears to be like a bay window type thing before it goes to the deck. The top left
That's correct.
section.
That's
If
the-
you remove that deck and pull that outcropping
Mm-hmm.
and then pull the deck closer, you could possibly eliminate any part of encroachment.
Yeah, that would be eliminating that sunroom and then just
Are
pulling
they
a deck.
amenable to that?
That is a last resort for them, but yes, that has been as an option.
Last resort or
Yeah.
next to last resort?
So that was, actually, we had this conversation last week, and I could see their hearts fall whenever I brought it up, but it is something that's in our back
This is
pocket.
obviously a give and take as to what
It
we'll
is, yeah.
allow.
Yeah.
So, okay. I just wanted to know if they're amenable to change.
Yes.
Cantilever design is an elegant solution to this problem. Seems to make sense. But Can you address that right side issue, what this covenant
Yes,
thing is?
yes, and so that right side setback, we initially did not plan on doing an encroachment on the side setback, but we've been through 3 reviews with the ARB so far, and from feedback with the ARB, they felt the building was feeling compressed and needed a little more breathing room because the lot is narrow. And so in kind of our negotiations with the ARB, they wanted to eliminate a front stairs. We took off a front stair and we pulled that gust room volume over that setback in order to get the ARB approval so they would feel comfortable with the way the house presents itself on the street to the rest of the neighborhood. And part of that discussion is in the town of Kiawah Island zoning ordinance for R1, is only a 10-foot setback for R1. However, since Kiawah Island was established under a covenant with Kika and the developer, that the town calls back to the covenant setback, which is a 15-foot setback that the ARB still holds to. And so what we're asking is the ARB is willing to let go of that covenant setback of 15 foot in order just to respect the 10-foot setback that is purely in the base ordinance for this district.
And if it were the 10-foot setback, there wouldn't be any issue on the
That's correct.
right-hand side.
That's correct.
On the right-hand side, I understand the HVAC, but is the other one just the size of that room?
Yeah, it's just to fit like pretty much a 10 by 10 bedroom in that area with a bathroom.
Okay.
The neighbor on the right side is not complained in any way, shape, or form about the HVAC units being there?
They have not.
Okay.
In fact, we've had 2 other neighbors submit comments last week in objection to this, and we had communication with both of them, and they both withdrew their objections after they had the opportunity to see the drawings and the mitigation strategies that we've had for these setbacks. So there's no current objections.
You have any documentation to that?
We do, yes. And I have it here if we need it.
I thought there was an objection in the packet.
There was an objection in the packet. If there's a withdrawal of that, that obviously needs to be, put into the packet as well, right?
Yes, so I'll get with John on the details of that, but per the request of the neighbor who submitted for the objection, they wanted to recuse themselves, their comment.
That was at 38 Burrows?
I believe it was 38.
Yes, that's the property to the left.
Do you have a written withdrawal from them?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a written withdrawal of the objection?
We do. We have an email sent to us that asks them to remove their
Because we
comments.
we do not have
We
that.
don't have that in our packet.
No.
Okay.
And they were the neighbors on the left side, not the encroachment side.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. Neighbors on the encroachment side have been mute.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Frank?
Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, I am frankly not as concerned about the issues on the rear, given that it's a cantilevered overhang. I am sensitive to, the encroachment on the right side, only because, when the ARB looks at it, right, they're just looking at the aesthetics of this property and not thinking about what happens when somebody comes to build a house on the property next door. Or is there a house already there?
That site is undeveloped.
It's undeveloped.
That's what I thought. So somebody comes to build a house next door, and there is an HVAC stand with a couple of compressors on it, across the setback line. Is there any way to mitigate the encroachment of the HVAC platform?
May I answer that question? We've investigated a few options. One, putting the HVAC under the house. We seriously investigated this. Unfortunately, it was not possible because not only are we in a flood zone, but we're in a limited moderate wave action zone. So everything down there has to be breakaway. Therefore, we can't put equipment down there. The other option was to try and fit the HVAC stand in the back left corner of the house where there's a little bit of coverage left within the buildable area. Unfortunately, we were not able to get the footprint of the actual equipment with required clearances into that area. And the client has actually foregone a generator from the stand altogether just to try to fit it on the lot.
Can I just ask a quick question about the HVAC stand? Have they already figured out the size of the compressors? And I only ask this because we replaced ours 3 years ago, and they're half the size of they were originally. So the question is that maybe that HVAC stand can actually be smaller with the size of the new compressors and the new efficiency of these units. Has that been looked into at all?
We have sized that based off the standard compressor size that we are building today.
Okay.
And so that's typically a 24 by 24 or 30 by 30 compressor with a 1 to 2 foot clearance around it based
Okay.
on it's on the front or the sides. And so the HVAC stand has been drawn to minimum size with those clearances based on current compressors. The only thing that we haven't looked at is instead of building it on stilts, actually hanging it off the building with a cantilever. So that could be an option as well if
Okay.
that's a concern.
I was just curious because those compressors, they've just changed so much that I didn't know if they were able to do that research. Thank you, sir.
I hate to go back,
If you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Phil.
If you did do the cantilevering, would that change the extent to which the physical compressor stand encroaches into the setback?
It could change it because we're doing a little less structure underneath. And so if we were relying on the building itself, we might be able to gain 6 inches perhaps. Another thing we can look at is aligning the outside wall of it so that rather than, yeah, so we would probably gain a little bit of square footage if we were to hang it, but we'd have to confirm that.
They have to be able to access it, though. It would be
They
a little
do,
bit harder
to
with the
service it,
cantilever.
yeah. And it also has a certain clearance required for air inflow
Mm-hmm.
and exhaust.
When
Right.
you broached the topic of it being a flood zone, what are you doing to the cantilevered section in the back to preclude the foundation that you're hanging the cantilever off from being damaged by the flood? Is there any sort of seawall type construction that's going to be used there, or what?
We are not planning any integral landscaping structures such as a seawall because we're trying to limit the amount of impact we're having on the natural grade. But we are designing the foundations to be breakaway for LIMWA standards so that if we do receive a moderate wave action event or storm, it would allow the walls and the slab to break away and not push the house or other houses adjacent to it off their foundations due to that
In other
action.
words, the deck would simply break off?
It would, yep. And the deck itself would not break off, but the deck would be built on piers, and then the walls in between, the screening, that would be a breakaway to break off.
No piers will be over the line?
That's correct, no piers are actually over the encroachment line.
Thank you.
And then everything at the foundation is also built to be water resistant, so we don't have rot or anything going on, even if the marsh were to advance.
Can I just ask another question? Can you go back and explain to me what the ARB asked you to do for size? I was a little bit taken back by that, and
Sure. Yeah, so initially, whenever we submitted this design to the ARB, the guest room volume on the bottom right of your screen
Yes.
was tucked in, so it was completely within the setback. And what that did is that cramped the front porch and the stairs, and the stair tower on the massing of the building.
that's when the ARB asked you to push it out more towards the setback line?
Yes, they were communicating to us that the massing was feeling too busy and too cramped, and so they were asking for more breathing room. So in order to do that, we used to have a dual stair on this project. We went from a dual stair to a single stair, and then pulled that volume out to give the house visual breathing room so that they were more comfortable with the way it presented for itself from the street.
So the ARB encouraged you to go into the setback?
Yes, that was part of our conversation.
That's what I was confused with. When he said it the first time, I thought, clearly I didn't hear that correctly, and
Yeah.
needed
It
to
was-
ask it again.
So going into the setback was our idea as a design in order to appease the ARB. And we presented to the ARB, they felt it was they approved the idea.
So you had 3 iterations. Was that the first, second? I know we have the current.
Yeah, is there a slide that shows the elevation on this building?
I know.
Sure. Thank you. So if you look at your screen here, this volume down here, sorry, is the volume that has moved into the setback, this volume here. And,
Oops, you went away.
oh boy. Okay. And so the first iteration we had a larger stair tower. The stair tower itself had cantilevers over it. And then there was we have the single stair you see here. There was an additional stair on the left, and the stairs were more narrow. And then what they asked us to do is they felt that this middle center massing was too cramped. It didn't have any breathing room because this eave was way over here. And so in order to help them feel more comfortable with the house presented on the street, this volume was pulled out to the right to allow this stair to be an appropriate size. We eliminated a stair, and it got more distance between these eaves so that the house felt less busy on the street.
Room in the front with the 2 windows on the right.
Yes.
What is the width of that?
The total width?
Yes.
Is that 10 by 10 bedroom you were
It's a
talking
10
about?
by 10 bedroom with a
Okay.
5-foot bathroom on the side of it, so it should be 15 feet.
So it's 15.
Approximately 15 feet.
What's the total square footage of the house?
The total heated square footage of the house is 3,300 square feet, approximately 3,300 square feet.
Wow, that's,
Other questions? Just, let me make sure I understand this. If we were on the right-hand side, if we were using the town of Kiawah Islands today setback rules, there'd be no encroachment over there.
That is correct.
Fact is, though, that a 30-year-old
covenant.
Covenant.
takes precedence.
That's correct.
That, to me, is significant. If there are no further questions, any members of the public want to speak on this case? Yes, ma'am. Please,
I
yeah.
don't think she was sworn in.
Yeah, you're going to need to be sworn in also because you weren't here at the beginning of the meeting.
Would you mind raising your right hand for me real quick? Thank you very much. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I sure do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So my name is Mary Ellen Perugini. I live at 24 Retz Bluff. So I'm on the same side of the road.
This isn't that
This is
case.
Burroughs.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Then I'm sworn in at least, but I will.
Confuses.
Coming soon to a theater near you.
Just hold that thought.
Okay, anybody else like to speak on this case? All right. I'd entertain any motions that anyone would like to make.
I know it goes against my nature, but I'll go with a motion that we approve with changes. I would approve the front and the right side. But I would not approve the back, especially the 2 back overhangs.
So which of the 2 do you not
I would
like?
remove the one that is on the left side with the outcropping and make the change that we discussed prior to this with Mr. Livengood.
I'm sorry, so is it,
The one in the top left-hand corner of that.
Yeah, that one.
this one?
Right, I would remove the outcropping from the wall and therefore bring the porch, if you remove this section here. And just
Bring the porch
Bring
in.
the porch in. That would decrease the encroachment by about, on that particular one, about 70%. And overall, probably about 40% on the whole. That's the way my math came up.
Is there a second for that motion? Hearing none, let me just ask you, Larry.
Yeah.
What do you have against those cantilevers? It seems to me that that's an elegant solution to this problem and is within the spirit, if not the letter, of our regulation.
I do understand that, but I have this thing about the OCRM. I know it's encroaching. And
It's encroaching
5
in
years
the
from
air,
now
not
and
on
10
the
years
ground.
from now, there are going to be problems. And I know we went through this last month, whether you approved something against my objection again, because this is my area of being pigheaded. But yeah, I just think at that time that you're setting yourself up for a problem. They knew, this house is not built. This is an empty lot. And they could design this so it would not go over any of the lines, front, side, or back. I'm willing to compromise on the front, which I don't think really caused any problem. The back, the HVAC system, I don't think that'll cause problem if he's cantilevering it. But the rear just really does a job on me. I think it's an abuse of a request. They have not constructed one board foot of this house. And to come in here and say we've worked for 6 months or 2 years or whatever, trying to approach it, and then the ARB has the nerve to say, just ignore the rules, we'll just, tell you go over the lines. This just really ticks me off, and that's my feeling.
I just think it's a good solution, because it's in the air.
I'm a party of one here, perhaps, but do what you gotta do.
All right, we don't have any motions from the floor yet.
Well,
Anyone
he
else?
did have a motion, nobody
It
said.
was not seconded,
Right,
so
okay.
it's dead. Any other motions anyone would care to make?
I'm still noodling.
I move to approve it.
And I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Just a clarification, because of the covenant, I mean, that was new to me as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't, that's a rule that we don't normally come across, but they would be within our existing setbacks.
Correct.
Without the covenant.
And then everything else is
Is that-
cantilevered.
Boone, you're shaking your head yes.
Yes, that's my understanding as
I
well.
just want to get it
Absolutely.
vocal.
And we have the right to override a covenant? Legal question.
It would have to still be approved as a variance. You could override, or a variance effectively goes around the zoning law, and it would be the same sort of
So in
concept
other
here.
words, our
You have to-
variances can override not only the laws, but also the covenants.
The covenants?
Interesting question.
Interesting
isn't it?
question.
It just seems interesting also that it's just something that we've never come upon
Right.
before that's so different for this one property.
It's because it was not built on for so long after it was
Right,
purchased.
right. But I also wish, just as a side note, was that, I mean, we've only owned our property for 12 years and we've had 3 surveys done. So I just wish that there was more history that would have given us an opportunity to see where, where some of this erosion and the OCR, I mean, I could sit here and say, well, my OCR line went in 43% too, but without anything to prove that it was 43% reduced, it just raises that question.
All right, so,
Phil, is it okay if we modify your motion to include the staff's recommended condition that an as-built survey be provided?
Yes.
Okay.
can you still second it?
Yeah, I still second it.
Can I just add to that? Not only would we like to see an as-built, but actually have it be within the lines that are noted on this, because we've had several come back that we've done something to, and then they come back and they're outside of the lines that were approved,
I think that's implied, yeah. When you do the survey, yeah.
you would think.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All right, the motion is to approve. I'll call the roll. Morris? Approve. Jay?
Approve.
Frank, yes.
Lynn, yes?
Lynn, yes. And Larry?
No.
No.
And Phil?
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved, 5 to 1, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay. I shall now call case BZA 24-000011 at 16 Retz Bluff Road. Now, my house is at 31 Retz Bluff Road, which is located directly across the street from this property. Further, 4 of my neighbors have submitted written comments on this case, and I see a number of my neighbors out here today, and I believe some of them will be making comments here. Based on these facts and to avoid any appearance of a conflict of interest, I'm recusing myself from this case and turning the chair over to our vice chair, Jay Lewis. I'll be staying here to listen, but I will not participate in the deliberations in any way. Jay, it's all yours.
We'll start with the staff report. Dan?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Members of the BZA, our final and last case today is case number BZA 24-000011. The applicant, Kenneth Weiland, represented by Clifton Hunt, is requesting a variance for the reduction of the required rear OCRM critical line setback for approximately 110 square feet for a proposed single-family residence located at 16 Retz Bluff. TMS number is 209-11-00-014. The property is located in the R1 zoning district. Adjacent properties to the east, west, and to the north across Retz Bluff are also located in the R1 zoning district. The subject property is approximately 15,676 square feet in size. Approximately 11,962 square feet of it is high ground, and the remaining 3,714 square feet is marshlands. The subject property is currently undeveloped and sits adjacent to the critical area to the south. Per the town of Kiawah Island land use planning and zoning ordinance, pursuant to section 1265 residential district, R1 residential district, this property is subject to a 20-foot front yard setback, a 15-foot side yard setback, and a 30-foot rear OCRM critical line yard setback with an allowed maximum lot coverage of 40%. Per Charleston County records, the property was acquired by Clifton Hunt in January 13th of 2023. Here's a zoning overlay of the subject property. A aerial from Charleston County GIS. A high-resolution aerial. A site visit was conducted on June 28th, 2024.
You have Borough Halls up. If you can put up Retz Bluff, please.
My apologies. That should say 16 Retz.
Thank you. It still says Boroughs here.
The picture itself, if you can see, it says 16.
Yeah, the pictures are correct.
Yeah, picture's good. It's just the text on the top. Apologize for that.
Thank you.
The picture on the right is the 40-inch live oak located on the front of the property. Adjacent properties across the street. Subject property. That image to the left is the drain that's you can see in the as-built survey owned by Kika. Subject property. Rear So the applicant's proposed plans include a pool and raised planters located in the rear of the property. The raised planters encroach into the required rear setback by approximately 2 feet 2 inches and is raised about 8 feet 6 inches from the slab. The raised pool located between the two raised planters encroaches into the rear setback by approximately 3 feet 2 inches and is approximately 10 feet above slab grade. Again, the total encroachment for both the pool and the raised planters is 110 square feet. I'm moving on to the variance approval criteria. Criteria A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. There may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the property due to the existing trees on the subject property, including the 40-inch live oak located along the front setback line. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "There's a 40-inch grand live oak tree located along the front setback line with a significant canopy that extends into the buildable area. Furthermore, the lot size, 11,962 square feet or 0.275 acres, and buildable area, 5,612 square feet or 0.139 acres, are small comparatively speaking and offer little alternatives in terms of house placement and or design." Criteria B, these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. These conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. The property is located in the R1 residential zoning district. Existing structures in the vicinity may or may not have similar encroachments based on current setback standards. Properties in the vicinity are developed, whereas this property is undeveloped. For the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "The degree of canopy encroachment of the 40-inch grand live oak tree into the buildable area of the property is not a condition that generally applies to other properties in the area," end quote. Criteria C, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The application of this ordinance to the property may not prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, as the subject property is undeveloped. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "Given the size of the property and the buildable area, the degree of canopy encroachment into the buildable area made it unreasonably restrictive to design a 4-bedroom home with a rear deck, screen porch, a pool on the property without some type of variance request. The degree of the setback variance being requested limited to 110 square feet and an encroachment no greater than 3 feet 3 inches was my best effort to design a home that preserves the 40-inch grand live oak while minimizing the amount of setback encroachment needed." Criteria D, the authorization of the variance would not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the zoning district will not be harmed by the granting of this variance. The authorization of this variance may not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent properties or the public good. The proposed additions encroach minimally into the required setbacks. The applicant is also saving a large grand oak tree by pushing the home farther back into the lot. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "There will not be a substantial detriment to any adjacent properties or to the public good, and the character of the zoning district will not be harmed by the grant should the BZA grant this variance. Efforts were made to minimize the degree of setback encroachment and limit it to the center rear of the property. A valid argument can be made that the preservation of the 40-inch grand live oak at the front of the property, which a rear setback variance will allow, would actually be of substantial benefit to the public good and character of the neighborhood," end quote. Criteria E, The Board of Zoning Appeals shall not grant a variance to the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in a zoning district, to extend a physically a non-conforming use of land, or to change the zoning district boundaries shown in the official zoning map. Granting of this variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, extend a physically non-conforming use of land, or change the zoning district boundaries. Criteria F, the fact that the property may be utilized more profitably should a variance be granted may not be considered grounds for a variance. The BZA may not consider profitability when considering this variance request. Per the applicant's letter of intent, the owners are not requesting this variance as a mean for profit. They purchased the lot hoping to build a home they and their family can enjoy. The screen porch, elevated deck, and elevated pool off the rear of the home are important elements of the design to the owners, given the property's proximity to the salt marsh behind the lot. Criteria G, the need for this variance shall not be the result of the applicant's own actions. The need for this variance may not be the result of the applicant's own actions. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the owners did create the specific site conditions driving the need for this setback variance. To the contrary, their willingness to build a home in which the design responds to the specific site conditions is worth noting. Criteria H, granting of the variance will not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interests, or will not adversely affect the other properties in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, and purposes of these regulations. Granting of the variance may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest, may not adversely affect other properties in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, and purposes of these regulations. Granting of the, excuse me, and last criteria I, granting of this variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance. Granting of the variance may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance. Even though single-family resident developments are not subject to landscape and tree preservation ordinance, the proposed plans to reserve the significant live oak tree to the front of the setback is consistent with the purposes of this ordinance. In the event the board considers approval of this variance request, planning staff requested the following condition of approval, which is the applicant shall obtain an as-built survey post-construction to verify all encroachments match the proposed plans. And that concludes staff's review.
Okay. Questions for staff? Lynn?
If I go to response B, I think it was B, it talks about, it was the one that talked about how there aren't many of these similar properties like this one at 16 Retz Bluff. I believe that's B. I guess I'm going to beg to differ on that one. I think Retz Bluff is one of the most exquisite, beautiful areas on Kiawah Island. And you can drive through there and almost every home has a grand oak. And somehow it's worked. So I just beg to differ with that property has something different that nobody else in Retz Bluff has. Because if you drive through there, you'll all see that just about every home has a live oak, huge live oak. Sorry.
No, it's. Any other questions down here in Philip? Any questions?
Yeah, I have one, and I'm not sure if it's more appropriately directed to staff or council, but probably worth raising it at this point. There have been a number of comments submitted to the board in the last 72 hours, some of which in the last 24 hours. I'm not sure at this point the extent to which what the applicant is asking for here the extent to which those comments are relevant to the specifics of what the applicant is asking for here may very well be. I just don't know. Also don't know when the applicant received copies of these comments as well. And I just want to be sure that the applicant feels or doesn't feel, as the case may be, that they are prepared to respond at this point to those comments, given how late in the process they were submitted. So I guess maybe the question is for counsel or the applicant. Are they prepared to respond to those comments now, or do they have any alternative?
I think we'll ask the applicant that, but clarification, it's up to each member's discretion. I'm looking at you, Boone. Is it 5 days prior to the meeting?
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay.
But
Two.
if we get in one later, it's up to us as
Yes,
the
that's
board whether or not we want to take it into.
Correct.
Okay.
Discretion.
All right, discretion.
Yes.
My question also is criteria H may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest. I think that's ridiculous considering the information we've received in the last couple of days in the way of the neighborhood. There have been many people in the neighborhood who have objected. So I don't think criteria H is clear at all.
In addition to that, if I can add, and this might be something that Mr. Willand will talk to us about when he comes up, is that one of the major concerns is flooding in this lot. That's my understanding. I didn't get all the way back because I didn't bring my snake rake with me this morning. But if they're going to come up and talk about it, can they also very firmly discuss what drainage plans they have? Because I think that's imperative for all of the neighbors to know what the plans are, not just assume that it's going to cause massive problems. So I agree with Larry.
And I also agree with Larry's comment about the criteria H in terms of meeting the neighborhood concerns and interests.
I have converts on this group.
I know 3 of us.
Dan, I had a question about the lot coverage. I had read it was, in your presentation was 33%, but I thought I saw somewhere where it was 40.65%.
So there was a typo in the beginning where it said the maximum lot coverage was 33% for the subject property. That was a typo. The allowed maximum lot coverage is actually 40%.
40? So with the 110, I didn't do the math, but that 110 square feet, they're at 40.65. Taking that out, does that take them back under 40?
So I accidentally skipped by the lot coverage part, but I can go ahead and read through it if y'all are okay with it. So this property is subject to a 40% maximum allowable lot coverage, but the Town of Kiawah Island Land Use and Planning Zoning Ordinance pursuant to Section 1263, description of zoning districts and regulations, grants an allowable lot coverage of 15% of the 40% maximum allowed lot coverage. The applicant's plans include 4,770 square feet, which is 39.87% of impervious lot coverage.
So they're over?
Under.
So that is the impervious lot coverage amount. In our zoning code, it says you're allowed to go 15% over that 40% if it's pervious material. So the applicant's plans include 93 square feet of pervious material, which is 0.77%, which gets that percentage over to 40.65.
Okay. Does that help you, Lynn?
Yeah.
So cutting through all of that, is the proposal within or not within the permitted lot coverage?
The proposal is within the permitted allowable increase of lot coverage
Because of the 15%.
because of the 15% rule.
I thought originally you said it was 15% less. Did you hear that? I thought it was the 40% and then it was 15% less, but it's 15% over the 40%. Is that
You're
correct?
allowed up to 15%, but it's not. It's only 0.65%.
0.65%,
Only
okay.
up to 15%. The 15% must be pervious.
So it's It's 15% of the 40%. So it'd be 40% times 15%, which would be 6%.
Yeah.
So their actual allowable maximum is 46%, only which 6% of that can be pervious. So on there,
Can be or must be?
can be. Oh, sorry, it must be,
Thank you.
sorry.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none. At this time, I'd like to call up, raise your hand, come up, and I'll state your name and address.
Do we want to do applicant?
The applicant.
Oh, I'm sorry, applicant.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kenneth Weiland. I'm working for Cliff and Louise Hunt, who own this lot. They are from Memphis, Tennessee. They really wish they could be here today. They had a health thing come up Friday, and they can't make it. But they really want everyone to know that they wish they were here. I also want to address the lot coverage before we get into this, because I think this was miscommunication between Daniel and myself. He took that lot coverage from a document I had submitted to the ARB. The ARB has different rules for lot coverage than the town does. There's certain things that the ARB puts into lot coverage that the town doesn't, and vice versa, so you can't compare apples to apples. I'm almost certain, I don't have the zoning ordinance in full with me right now, but I'm almost certain that rear pervious at-grade deck does not count towards lot coverage with the town.
It does, but it'll count towards that overage.
Okay. This is not a lot coverage request variance.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, no, I understand
Okay.
that. I was just asking a question about lot coverage when it was discussed, that's
Okay.
all.
All right. I was not aware of how much opposition this would cause. I've been before this board twice before, and I've not had any opposition. So I received all the documents, I believe, last Wednesday. It was middle of the week last week.
And then we received, I'm sorry, Jay,
And I got one opposition letter at that point, and then I got a few more this morning.
this morning.
So I understand the rules and the fact that y'all can make these decisions, but it does seem a bit unfair that there is a rule in there that I'm supposed to have 5 days to look at this. You know, it's tough to come into a meeting with this much opposition. I told the owner in my 2 previous experiences that I didn't have any opposition. I believe if he knew his neighbors were here in opposition, he would want to be here. So I don't know how this is going to work out, but if this gets voted down, I would feel terrible for what I told him, not being aware of how much opposition was here. I think he would have loved to have been here if he knew.
Would you like a continuance?
Well, the problem is I don't know, because I don't know what y'all are going to vote, and I don't know.
Well, we can't, we need to hear everything, and then a vote will
Why
be
don't we go-
taken, but you can,
Yeah.
again, correct me, ask for a continuance now,
Okay.
talk to the owners, and bring it back next month.
Why don't we just go through it and see how it goes?
And that's the reason I raised the question I did a little while ago. I agree that sort of fundamental fairness would dictate that you have the opportunity, you and your client have the opportunity to take into account in your presentation the concerns that the neighbors have, and I just wanted to know whether or not the same question. Would you prefer to continue it to a subsequent meeting?
What I told the owner was, and I, like I said, this is only my 3rd time in front of this board, so I don't know what's going to happen, but what I told him was, I'm going to put forth my case as best I can, and, I think we're just going to let the chips fall where they may.
Okay.
I don't think his presence here would change, it shouldn't change opinions.
Did you receive his heartfelt message that he sent to all of us yesterday as well?
So that's another question I have, is that came in last night, and I did not know that was coming. I wasn't even aware of the situation in full.
Right, okay, so that came in, I think, yesterday around
Is
3
that,
o'clock.
do I need to give the board members that letter? Do y'all have that letter?
We have it.
We have that letter.
We have it.
Do the folks, the neighbors in opposition have that letter? Is that something I could pass out?
It doesn't concern us as far as, if you want to share information, that's up to you.
Okay.
We're not mandating it or are offering. But it, again, it goes back to what we've all been talking about, the 5-day,
Yeah.
making sure everyone has all the information available.
Okay, well, I'll just relay it in my talk.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I'll try to be brief. Given the sort of unexpected opposition, I want to make sure I make as good a case as I can. So I just ask you to bear with me real quick while I run through all this. Okay. Okay, so I started work for this new home in the spring of last year. It was over a year ago. It's been an extremely challenging lot in many ways, but the most difficult part of the design relates to the fact that the buildable area is first of all quite small, relatively speaking. I agree that Rhett's Bluff is beautiful and has a lot of large trees, but it is a very small lot. It gets us to the 40% lot coverage. And there's a tree on the buildable lot line that encroaches a significant portion into a buildable area that is already quite small. I've been working on Kiawah for 11 years, and I have not encountered something this difficult. The lot is also quite wide, but it is not deep. So the distance between the existing 40-inch live oak tree with the healthy canopy that extends into the buildable area, which I must set the house back from, so the distance from that tree to the rear lot line established by the OCRM is roughly 45 feet, which is very tight. I don't have comparison, but I've never come anywhere close to that on other properties on Kiawah. I just want to show everybody. I don't know if everyone has seen this tree, but it's a huge tree, big canopy. Okay.
Can I just ask, when did they purchase this lot?
Early last year.
2023.
Early last year? So that tree was there when they bought the lot? Thought so.
And I was not involved when it was
That's
purchased.
okay, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
That tree was probably there when the Vanderhorst bought the property.
Absolutely, Philip.
So let's see. The current design being proposed, along with the rear setback variance being requested, is a result of over a year's work between myself, the owner, the ARB, and Sammy Milliman, who's an arborist with Arbor Care, with the preservation of the existing tree as the primary design driver. Myself and the owners and the AR believe we've landed on a design that does a pretty good job at meeting all the building and zoning requirements other than this variance request for the property, and does so in a way that respects what makes Kiawah so special, and that we're trying to take care of trees. I don't know if anyone who knows who Mark Pamar is, but he's one of the land developers for Kiawah. Maybe one of the most influential people for the development of turning Kiawah into what it is today, from a design and land development perspective. And he said that during one of my ARB design meetings, he doesn't talk much and he certainly doesn't give compliments all that much. He said that when we were writing the Design with Nature design guidelines, this design epitomizes what him and those writers had in mind when they were hoping for architects to, quote, design with nature. The design of the house is two-story wings on either side and a single one-story wing in the middle. And the whole reason for that was because that tree swoops over the middle of the property, and I had to keep the middle of the lot at 1 story. Let's see. So regarding the specific variance request, I believe all 9 criteria are met. Obviously, maybe not everyone agrees with me on that. But I really do believe, I thought this was going to be a slam dunk. In fact, if there was ever a reason to grant a setback variance due to atypical conditions, this would be the case. I agree that there are trees on these properties, and it's the architect's job to design around trees, and it's a challenge. This lot was such a challenge because the buildable area is so small, and there's just nowhere else to go. And also, the depth of the lot was such that the house had to be wide and not deep. The living room is 18 feet. The path between the pool and the living room is 4 feet, and the pool is 14 feet by 14 feet. And an entry stair is going left to right. That's a requirement of the ARB, and this is the minimum depth that the ARB will allow. So I basically did everything possible to make this work. So in other words, we could make the living room 14 feet wide I don't think that's something that I would endorse or draw for someone investing this much money in a house. I don't think it's fair to expect that, if that makes sense. There's also the issue of the owner's granddaughter, and I believe that that's an atypical situation. His first granddaughter is 13 years old. I knew she had health issues. I knew she was in a wheelchair. We designed the house for wheelchair accessibility. I did not know until last night that she has a lot more serious problems than I was aware of. I talked to him yesterday afternoon when he was very concerned about bringing this up. He didn't want to use this as the reason for the variance. But he basically told me, and he hadn't told me this before, but he said, we need the pool size to be big enough to have a sun shelf so that she can sit in that. And I remember having this discussion with him a month or two ago about a sun shelf, saying, that would be great, but that's not necessarily justification for a variance. You know, it's just sort of a bell and whistle. And he didn't tell me at that time why he was asking for it, but last night he told me we've got to have a sun shelf, and there's no point in building a pool if the adults can't use it and have a sun shelf. So we could make the pool smaller, and that was one of my suggestions to him, was go to a 14 by 10 pool. But then when he brought this up to me last night, I started to understand, okay, that would not work given his situation. And I would argue that his personal situation is atypical. And I believe that the spirit of variance, granting a variance, is for atypical conditions. So I think we have a property situation that's arguably not everyone deals with, or not every architect deals with, and then we have a personal atypical condition. So I think if there was ever a reason to grant a setback variance due to atypical conditions, this would be one. So I appreciate that variances should not be expected and that zoning guidelines should be adhered to by architects and owners. But I also appreciate that variances and boards such as yours exist to review atypical situations, which I feel this case has. I think it would also be hard to argue myself or any other architect could design a 4-bedroom home on this lot while also preserving the live oak tree at the front of the property and giving the owners what they want in terms of the pool for the granddaughter and 4 bedrooms. They have 3 children and 8 grandchildren. So I originally looked at a 3-bedroom house for them, and they said, we've got 3 children, they're all having grandchildren, that's not enough. We're not gonna do it if we can't do 4 bedrooms. I also have a rebuttal to neighbors, but I don't know if I should read that now. I'm expecting some pushback.
Let's hold that.
Can I have a chance afterwards, though?
The way it works is you will address the board, not the neighbors directly. So,
Do I have a chance to talk again if there's a lot of opposition?
yes, I can bring you back up.
Okay.
But first we may have questions for you.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay.
Other than a potential rebuttal.
All right. Questions, Lynn?
Can you address the drainage, how you're going to handle all the drainage on this lot, considering it's in a flood zone and?
Yes, so the ARB reviews drainage at the 3rd round. We've gone through 2 rounds. I had to get them to approve the variance to come here.
Okay.
So I have not finished the ARB process. I can't finish the ARB process without knowing whether or not this will get approved.
Okay.
So, the ARB looks at drainage and they look at the drainage plan to make sure water is not moving to neighboring properties. There's a drain on the left side, which I guess is the east. I'm sure the owner and the landscape architect would have no problem running a perforated drain along the left side setback to that drain.
Okay.
And I also believe that they would be fully willing to do the same thing on the right side. The lot slopes from the street to the OCRM line, so there's no real natural drainage left and right.
Are you planning on raising, how much dirt are you planning on bringing in?
The slab I have set at 7.6.
And where is it currently?
The grades for the lot, let me make sure I give you the right information. Hold on.
Thank you, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm being a little hog today.
So the street elevation is 6.5. and it slopes down. The middle of the lot is 5 to 5.5, and then the OCRM line is 3 to 4.
So you're gonna raise it all up to 7.6?
The top of slab is currently proposed at 7.6. And that is, there's no standard slab height. But in working with the ARB, that's what they're telling me I should set all houses at, and that's the highest they're allowing it. I guess 3 years ago, I don't know if you remember when we had 2 hurricanes and then that big storm, lots that had slabs between 6.5 and a 7, I guess, got flooded. So the ARB started allowing 7.6. And so, you know, if it was a requirement to lower the slab 6 inches, I could talk to the owner about that. But I think it's very important for owners to have a slab a little bit higher so that when we get these storms, they don't get 3 inches of flood water.
Right. I was
And
also
it really
asking
wouldn't
that.
affect the drainage on the side, what the slab height is.
You
'cause
don't
the
think
roof's
so? So
much
if the
higher.
water comes in and the Clifton's lot is 7.6 and it comes in and hits it at 7.6, but the neighbors are at 6, you don't think that water's going to bounce off of theirs and go into the neighboring lots?
Well, if it was,
Cause
if
flooding
it
there?
was at 6.6, it would do the same thing because grade is a foot lower than that. But that's what I'm saying. I would be fine. And the ARB might require, I haven't gotten to that third step of the
Okay.
ARB process, but putting drains down either side of the property line, I think would be, the owners would definitely be willing to do. And it might even be required by the ARB.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I have 2 sort of follow-on
Go ahead, Phil.
questions to that. The first one is for council. Is it within the purview of the Board of Zoning Appeals to approve or disapprove the height of the slab?
Boom. Question was directed to you, Boone.
I'm sorry, sir. Read it through.
It's- Can you repeat your question, Phil?
Yes. Is it within the purview of this board to approve or disapprove the height at which the slab is set?
You know, Chairman, if
I mean, I would have expected the answer to be a pretty clear no, but maybe
Correct.
your hesitation makes me want to rethink that.
no, it is a clear no. So, you know, this board's whole job is to grant a variance based on what is in the zoning code itself. So if you're, as long as that language, which is not in there, I don't believe, then it is not within this board's purview to specifically address that question there.
Okay, then my next question then is for the applicant. Is there anything about the construction specifically associated with the requested variance that is going to make a difference in the drainage plan or the drainage on the lot?
So I should also bring this up because this conversation started last spring with the ARB. When I told them, I said, I don't think I can fit a house, the stair, and a pool between that tree and the rear setback based on what the buffer you're asking me to put the house on from the tree. And also in studies and talks with Sammy Millen about how some of the limbs grow up and over the house, where that stair is as close to the tree as I can put it. So the ARB, and I don't want to say who, but recommended, they said, we would support a pool or deck encroachment over the rear setback if it's in the middle of the rear of the lot, so as to not, you know, be as far away from either side neighbor as possible. So that is one factor here. Is I did try to minimize the encroachment to the middle of the lot, as far away from either side neighbor as possible. But to be more specific about your question, if the owner's grandchild did not have this health issue, they would be probably okay with scrapping the raised planters. I thought that was a positive impact to the height of the foundation. But if that went away, the owners would be fine losing that, and they'd probably be okay with a smaller pool, and we wouldn't be here today. But I don't think that would change the drainage one bit, because the water is right there, and it slopes from that point directly to the water. I don't think that would lead water to any neighbor.
And the reason I was asking that question was because some of the comments that we've gotten from the neighbors have all been about drainage. So I wasn't trying to bring something in that we don't normally have as our scope, but seeing how, is one of the,
So can I,
No, and I understand that, and so the reason for my follow-on question was just that point. We're focused on the requested variance and whether or not granting or not granting that request is going to make a difference in terms of the way the lot drains vis-a-vis the neighbors. With or without the change, with or without the variance.
Yeah, correct. The only reason we're having this today is because of the encroachment, the 110 square feet.
right.
So,
yeah, I would say that encroachment, I'm not a flood expert, but I can't imagine that flooding to neighboring properties would change if we took that off.
okay.
And I dealt with this with another homeowner who was threatening to get sued by his neighbor for drainage issues. And I'm not an attorney, but South Carolina water law follows what's known as common enemy doctrine. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this. It goes back to Britain in the 1600s. You can't hold one person responsible for flooding to neighbors that is a, quote, common enemy to all.
Okay. Thanks. Question about your arborist. She's not here?
It's Sammy Milliman.
All right,
He's not here now.
He's not here.
What is there damage to the root structure?
No, it's a very healthy tree.
Right, but with what you're proposing to do, will there be damage to the root structure? Or have they offered an opinion on that? And I noticed there's a lot of limbs being taken out.
Or is the question whether the new structure will damage the roots?
Of the 40-foot or 40-inch?
So if you read his letter that he put forth, he has a 3-step proposal for limbing the tree to allow it to survive construction and I guess, in his opinion, stay healthy and keep growing after construction. So whether or not, I would guess that there are existing roots under the footprint of the tree, because generally what he's told me in the past is the root system follows the canopy. But I would imagine that the roots that are underneath the footprint of the proposed house, are related to the limbs that he's proposing to remove, if that makes sense.
Okay.
There was a lot of thought put into this in terms of how to put the house there with the limbs and the sequencing of the delimbing of the tree.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yes. Number one, I take umbrage when you say, as smugly as you did, anyone spending this amount of money can't live with a 14-foot living room, number one. Number two, I have a handicapped daughter. She's missing a leg. I've done a lot of studies in the ADA laws and things like that. A 14 by 10-foot pool versus a 14 by 14-foot pool. Wheelchair is 32 inches wide. The extra wide ones are 35.5 inches wide for oval-sized people. If that can't fit into 10 feet as opposed to 14 feet, I think I'm being lied to. Nothing personal.
Well, I wasn't trying to be smug, I'm sorry.
No, you said that 10-foot, reducing the pool to 10 feet would not be functional. That's not true. Even a waterborne wheelchair, which we have, is 34.5 inches wide.
Right.
So 10 feet versus 34.5 inches, which is less than 3 feet. So I think this is all bourgeois. I think you could have designed the house slightly shorter, slightly less steep, and that would have solved the whole problem. We wouldn't be here. As for the flooding situation, raising the property, I think, despite English common law, will cause problems for your neighbors. But it appears that they spent a lot of money on the lot, as you said, and they spent a lot of money on building this house, so they probably don't care. That's just my feelings on this matter. I'm finished.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional questions? At this point, thanks, you can sit down, sir. please raise your hand, come up, state your name and your address. You are limited to 3 minutes, but it's my discretion to extend that. You can move that microphone down if,
Okay.
there you go, thanks.
Testing. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Gail Roddy, and I have lived on Rhett's Bluff, number 17, for 28 years. And I want to thank the chairman, the vice chairman, and members of the board for letting me share our concerns. And I am going to try and stay on course, because after the conversations that I have heard, I have so many questions, but I'm going to present what I think the neighbors and I at Rhett's Bluff are concerned with. We are concerned over the request for the variance of 3.5 feet on the creek side. And all of our concerns have been voiced in the letters that you received. And I am the guilty one for getting the letters to you so late. But it has been July the 4th, and we've all had lots of company, and people have been away. Our goal is to protect our valuable ecosystem that we have on Rhett's Bluff. And the variance of lot number 16 is interfering with that. The state has set a critical line on the marsh side to prohibit building beyond that. And this committee is made up of a very educated group of people, we hope, that have studied the ebb and flow of the tide, the health of the marsh, and we have a marsh committee here on Kiawah that mitigates the waters there. And it also studies the flooding area. So I think that having them set the critical line is very valuable, that we should not go beyond that line towards the marsh. And I hope that all of you have gone over and looked at this lot, because it's very low, it's very shallow, and it's very challenging to build on because of the placement of the trees and just the complete setup of the lot. We all thought that the lot was unbuildable, but anyway, the architect and the clients are going forward. I also wondered if it would be a possibility to move the house back 3.5 feet towards the road and not interfere with the shoreline of the marsh. Now, that would interfere with the grand oak that is there, but in my estimation, it would be less expensive to move the house back and plant a tree than it would be to disturb nature on the shoreline of the marsh. And two, it is not a hardship not to have a pool. Everybody doesn't have a pool, and the hardship would not be to do away with the pool and the planter boxes. And it has been suggested that the board should be very hesitant to grant any variance which involves incremental encroachment on wetlands and detrimental to the adjoining properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're at 4 minutes. Are you close to wrapping up?
I'm sorry?
You're at 4 minutes.
Okay, good. Can I have one more? Okay. Okay.
Sure.
We have been concerned about the arborist's recommendation to remove the 2 cedars on the marsh side, because those two trees, their root system holds the dirt there, and it will lessen erosion if those trees are stayed there. I know they want the view going through the big oak, but I've had consequences with the ARB on the other side of my house. So anyway, we do not want to have further erosion, and it also should be noted that there is a natural buffer of wax myrtle on every other lot on Rhett's Bluff, on the creek side. But there is no wax myrtle growing in front of number 16 for some reason. But there is very much marsh grass that has extended into the almost 3/4 of the way of the lot. Okay, and I would like to say that this is nothing personal. We do not know our future neighbors, and we wish them the very best and empathize with their family situation. But I don't think that is what we're here to discuss.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gail.
And I have some pictures that I'd like to present to you of Rhett's Bluff.
Okay.
This is what happens.
Give them to staff, and they can incorporate it into the record.
Okay.
It's just,
We know what happens.
yeah. I mean, you feel free to share. All right. Who would like to be next? Raise your hand. Come forward. And you were sworn in, correct? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Diana Mezzanot, 99 Reds Bluff. I am not really very close to this.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm sorry,
Make sure
Diana
she gets it.
Mezzanot, 99 Reds Bluff. I'm not real close to where this is happening, but I want to speak in general terms about it. The ARB, regarding the ARB and Town Planning Department recommendations, my understanding, and I spoke with the ARB, is they are mainly concerned with aesthetics, which includes landscaping and thus tree retention. They do not address normally rising waters and marsh conditions. And the town's planning department needs to follow the legal ordinances in place today when making their recommendations. Lot 16 was platted in July 1991, and the last time the developer's master sheet was updated was 2007. Based on the master sheet, this lot's setbacks are approximately 10 feet from the critical line on the left and 20 feet on the right. That's different than what you saw at Burroughs Hall, which was 30 feet. This is 10 and 20. And I doubt in today's world that would be acceptable. Our knowledge concerning the marsh and its importance to the protection of Kiawah Island has evolved over the years. From the town's marsh management plan, which was adopted in 2723, about 55% of Kiawah Island is marshland. It serves as an important protective barrier for the island as it relates to significant storms, flooding, et cetera. Stewarding our island's marshes today can further assist the flooding and erosion impacts on the island in the future. Partly why I'm here is I want the owner, especially after what I've heard, to understand we want them to have their house. And if they want a pool, we want them to have their pool. But protecting the marsh benefits the entire island, even this homeowner. A healthy marsh will help protect their property too. And I urge them to find another way to build their dream home on this property, and I hope the ARB in town will assist them in doing that. I wonder if it would not be better to sacrifice the 40-inch tree, of which up to 40% of it's going to be cut down anyhow. So it's only really 60% of the tree that's going to remain in the front lot, to cut that down and plant a healthy tree, a healthy live oak in its place. You could move the house forward then, probably the 3.5 feet that they're asking for right now. I don't know that exactly, but I would think that they could move it forward. And I understand we have a tree ordinance. I understand the importance of trees. I love our grand oaks there. But considering 40% of this tree is going to be eliminated anyhow, it's not going to be the grand oak you're seeing in the picture. It's going to be 35 to 40% less than that. So, and Millamans are wonderful people and they're wonderful arborists, but they can't guarantee that tree will live. Because like the architect said, the roots of that tree will be underneath that, extend underneath the house, even underneath the road. We had that. Ours is a spec home, but they had to treat our trees for probably about 5 years after the house was built. And I don't even think 40% of the trees that they were working on were even close to being cut back 40%. Our trees weren't. So to me, it would be a better solution if the ARB and the town would consider letting them cut down that one oak tree and moving the house forward so that they can get what they want in the house they want, versus doing damage to the marsh, which every time we intrude into it, we do some damage to it. And it does cause irreversible damage that is going to be hard to address, or if we can even address it at all, whereas we can address the tree.
Okay. Thank you. You're right at 4 minutes, too. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Can I ask Boone a question in regards to the tree?
I'm sorry.
Can I ask Boone a question in regards to the tree? So we had looked at a lot once in Cassique, and there was a huge tree in the middle, and we had asked if we would be allowed to move that tree, and they said it's a county decision. Have you heard that?
That is a good question.
Cacique is not Kiawah.
Okay, all right, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Brain fart, sorry.
Very nice.
There we go.
Thank you.
That's exactly, it solves my question.
Okay, who would like to be next?
Oh, no, they keep claiming they're Kiawah.
That's right.
Anyone? Yes or no? Please state your name and your address, and you have been sworn in, correct?
I have, yes.
Okay.
So it's Mary Ellen Perugini, 24 Retz Bluff Road. First of all, I don't want to use up a lot of my time, but I wasn't informed of this meeting, so I feel like the 500-foot, which is the public notification currently in the town ordinances, could be revisited when it starts to affect water flow, which absolutely, I'm about 6 lots down, and I will say that when we bought our lot about 7 years ago, the marsh and the erosion that we saw happening was a major concern. There was development nearby to us that did some disruption that we were not too happy to see, and there's no question that it affected our erosion. There's no question. So the water has a way of twice a day, going in, going out, going in, going out. And so it might be something worth considering, because I found out about this a little late. I don't have a dog, so I don't walk by that signage at the street. But I wanted to address whether or not this is extraordinary. And I don't know if you were with the town. Are you with the staff? Okay, so I was really somewhat shocked by a lot of the things you said in your report. So we live, like I said, just several lots down. We have a 41-inch live oak. I just looked up my tree and topo was done about 10 years ago, and it was measured at 41. So it's certainly bigger today. They grow slowly, but they grow. Everything about our house build, and I'm happy to say that live oak is alive and well and healthy, and we've taken extraordinary good care of it. Everything about our house build was informed by that live oak, okay? The other thing that I want to tell you is that lot size-wise, I looked this up as well on our plans. The Highlands for this particular lot that we're talking about is just under 12,000 square feet. Ours is just under 13,000 square feet. It used to be that the town allowed 40% lot coverage for something that would have been our lot size. They changed that at some point before we bought the lot. Obviously, whenever people buy the lot, they need to know what they've got, and we lived with what we've got. But we are at 33% when we informed our build. And when I just did the math, that gives us about 500 square feet less workable area than this lot, six houses down from us. So I don't consider this by any means an extraordinary situation in terms of somebody buying this lot. I will say too that walking in the neighborhood, the width of it and the very apparent lack of depth of it is not unheard of on Kiawah. And there's a house off of, I want to say it's called Oyster something Road off of Blue Heron when you first go in, and it's the
Oyster
first
Shell.
left. Oyster Shell. First house on the left after you've passed this little cul-de-sac. Very narrow lot, very long lot. They built on it just shortly after we finished our house build, and we would bike by and say, wow, they really did accommodate architecture to have this house fit this lot. So then the only other thing I want to say is on the marsh, we've talked a lot about flooding. It's an absolute concern in the neighborhood. Kika's made a lot of investments to try to help it. I have video of the December big event where I was wearing waders up to here, and despite those waders, I was completely soaked. So we're dealing with a lot already in the neighborhood. But on the marsh itself, Diana referred to that marsh study, and I remember when I saw that first, I saw that our marsh, not too, right behind our house and this house, is one of the unhealthy ones on that plan. So we need to be doing the opposite, please, board, is we need to be thinking of increasing the setbacks in the OCRM and not decreasing them.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Just one other thing, I don't know if I have time, but on the pool, I will just say, I imagine all of us on Kiawah have seen what a pool foundation looks like. It is super more disruptive than a house foundation. The amount of CMU block and cement is just, multiple fold. So putting something like that closer than what the current setbacks are, I just feel is going to do all this damage to the lot that we've already been living with.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Sir, please state your name and your address.
Randy Kiawah, 33 Retz Bluff Road. I just want to talk about the drainage. The architect that was up here, he talked about building some pervious drain-like thing. The street drains from the street into the marsh. It has a piping system. It runs to that drain that was shown, that Daniel shown. And actually, we had the Ryan Elmers out with Kika, great, real smart civil engineer. And at the end of the pipe, which is on that drain, it has a valve, a water valve, a check valve type. I call it a check valve. I'm in the valve business. So, but from there, it's supposed to drain into the marsh. Today, it's blocked up. It has to be maintained. The valve doesn't work all the time. It gets choked up with pine straw or whatever during certain situations, but it drains from the road to the marsh. On the other side of Gail's house is another drain, and so forth and so on is the way it works there. So my only comment is you need to, the civil engineer for Kika, y'all should get some information from him. He actually commented too that the house does not leave enough of an easement. There's an easement and there's a setback. He has to come in with equipment to do maintenance on those drains.
So you're saying that there's an easement on the lot that's not shown on the map for them to access that drain, sir? Am I understanding?
I think I actually saw that.
Well, when we say that question for staff,
Okay,
ask staff
sorry.
that question.
But there is, according to him, there is a rule or a setback from the easement line so that the house or the structure has to be. I just ask you folks to take a look at that and make sure that we're within that. You wouldn't want to later on do something, but it does drain. That lot is wet. My other comment, talking about the elevation of the lot, the water comes in from the east and goes west. That's the way the tide comes in. When the tides are accelerated. Today, water floods into that lot and floods across her house. It comes in, and the way it's leaned, but it comes in and it runs over her house. It goes out into the street, it goes into my yard across the street, it goes into lot 34, it goes on down, and finally, eventually, it goes all the way down Shilbrett. So if that house is built, and I'm like Roddy and Diana said, this is nothing personal. I mean, we'd love to have nice new neighbors from Memphis, Tennessee, that'd be great. But that house built, and if it's elevated and built up, number one, that house is going to be like, when the water comes in, it's going to be like a barge going down the river. Water's going to go left and water's going to go right. Carol Lou's going to have more water, as stated earlier. And I just ask that you make consideration of that. I'm not saying stop everything, but I'm saying I don't think enough due diligence has been done, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I'm Lori Healy at 21 Reds Bluff. We have lived on Kiawah for 24 years, happily. And I want to say, when we first moved in, my husband put a pole in our marsh, a 6-foot pole, and we watched the tides. And I think a big concern is, we all know that the oceans are getting deeper and the tides are getting higher. And Reds Bluff totally floods over, back of us. I mean, it's a gorgeous view. We have the best view on the island. However, you have to think about increasing tides. And the setback was made for a reason. And to violate that now is crazy, I think, because of the increasing water. And we'll be sorry in a couple of years. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Please come forward, state your name and your address. No, wait till you get up to the microphone. Oh, you have not been sworn in?
Hey, sir, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. Can you please raise your right hand for me? Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. My name's Lance Spencer. I live at 40 Sunlit Bend in Inlet Cove, and it's the opposite side of the island from Reds Bluff, but we bike through there 2 to 3 times, 4 times a week. And we have the same kinds of issues with applicants and things going on in our neighborhood. So I'm a member of the community, so I'd like to speak as well. And when we biked through Reds Bluff last week and we saw the notice of the hearing, actually I didn't come intending to speak, but after hearing everything and thinking about it, our first reaction was, you're kidding me. I don't have to live there and worry about being a neighbor, but either buy a lot that accommodates the house or build to the lot. And there's reasons, like many have said, about the reasons for the setbacks and the standards to protect our ecosystem, protect our community, to protect adjacent lots, and we all need to adhere to that. So I also think that there is a trend that I'm seeing as I talk around the community of, I bought the lot, let me build my house, the guilt card. Buyer beware, but the buyer has every ample opportunity to know what buildability is on a lot. And I heard what you said about the tree. Don't tear the tree down. These grand old oaks, somebody said they've been here since the Vanderhorst. They probably have. So don't, because somebody's bought the lot, allow them to tear down the tree just to make the house that they want to build. Buy a lot where it'll accommodate the house.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay, seeing none. Staff, would you come back up? We have a question about it was the easement for the drainage?
Easement for the drainage, I mean, is that on, it's so small, I can't see it on this little piece of paper. I need a magnifying glass.
I'll pull up the survey.
Oh, that's Burroughs.
Oh,
It might just be there you go.
It's near the end. Here it is. No?
No, that's not it, it's, no.
it was actually in the PowerPoint.
There.
Not this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. This one.
I know, it's just so small, I can't see it.
This is looking north, so if you're looking to that right side, which is east.
Oh,
that
there's
is-
the drain.
That is
Okay.
the drain.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like if they were to come in to work on that, they would be going to that house to the left and coming across part and then coming in. Is that correct? Because this is the front here, so if you're
Yeah.
standing there looking at it, they're gonna come in through,
As you're facing the house on the left.
yeah, as you're facing the house on the left, they're gonna come in. I do,
Yeah.
that's what I'm looking at, right here.
You have this one?
Yeah, is it, no, wait a minute.
I don't think you're looking at that.
I'm sorry, sir.
Give that to Dan so he can
Dan,
put it up. It's in the packet, so if you can put that slide up, please.
is it in the packet?
Well, he has, I assume it,
Yeah, it's in the packet.
No, I didn't, that's why I asked that question.
Yep.
Oh, here it is, okay.
Okay,
So,
there's these.
so here's the dock area easement. How much is that intruding into the other one? I'm sorry. Here it is. So Dan, is it the same? Is it, how much is coming into it, and is there an additional easement on that left-hand side of this lot?
So it looks like we're looking at two different easements. There is what looks to be it's either a 16 or an 18-foot drainage easement, which is on both sides, which means on 16, it's 8 feet from that property line past is the drainage easement.
Okay,
It's a 16-foot. I believe.
it's buried though, right?
Okay. I believe this reads 16 feet, which is easement to easement, which means that's from what staff is implying, it looks like a 16-foot easement on both sides, which is 8 foot on 15 and 8 foot on 16.
Okay.
And one more question. If Reds Bluff has such a penchant for flooding, that obviously means that even if you put down pervious decking or driveway or whatever, there's not going to be any place to absorb because the land is basically saturated to begin with. Am I not correct? I mean, you can put pervious on top of a bog and there's no place for the water to go. It can go through, but only if there's room at the bottom that's drier and the water goes through by osmosis. But if the underground is so saturated because every time the tide comes in high, which is fairly regularly nowadays, there's not going to be any place for it to go. So even counting pervious land in an additional 15% of the 40% or 6% total is actually useless because you're not creating anything that's drainable. I mean, you could just leave it as grass and it would be equally drainable, or not.
We don't have any stormwater ordinances right now. We're working on that currently with planning commission and workshops. So I can't answer your question.
Is that why John hid from this meeting?
So I won't be able to answer that, but it is impervious area, whereas now it's pervious. So the water does have to go somewhere.
Any other questions for staff?
are we allowed to make a motion?
Not yet. Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll close it to the public comment. I will like for the board to discuss.
Oh, there's somebody else.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Our
He's
architect.
got to give his response.
You need to come up here, please.
I will not do a rebuttal, but I would ask if the variance is denied, whether there would be any consideration for allowing the encroachment only at the pool and not the two raised planters. Thank you.
Okay. This time I will close it to the public comment. Anyone in the commission would just want to discuss it, or you ready for a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Hold on a second. Phil, do you have anything to add? Are you ready for a motion?
Yeah, I would like, once again, to put the question to the applicant as to whether they would like the board to continue the consideration of the case to give them an opportunity to take into account things that have been raised relatively late in the process.
Okay. At this time, I think we're ready to make a motion, and then the applicant can react and take action based on what we decide. So, Lynn, did you have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we table this until next month and they reapply and they come in with the capability to answer some of the questions about the planters and possibly the side easement. And we'll just be more informed. Does that make sense?
Do we have a second to that? You basically are asking to continue it for 1 month?
Continue it for 1 month.
Or to when they're ready?
To when they're
And I
ready.
believe they have 90 days. So, does anyone want to second Lynn's motion? Seeing none.
Second?
Oh, timeout. What? Were you seconding that, Phil?
Yes.
Okay. Take a vote. No. I'm sorry, Morris?
No.
No? No? Lynn?
Oh, I lost.
The math's not there yet, but yes. So it would be a 2 to 3, it fails. I would like to entertain any other motions.
I'd like to make a motion that the variance be denied based on the fact it doesn't meet our criteria for approval. It's contrary to the neighborhood interest.
Second.
A second? Take a vote?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes, yes, raise my hand.
Phil?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
So the variance is denied by a vote of 5-0. And please work with staff, they'll tell you the next steps. But basically it was denied because of the encroachment into the OCRM. So, thank you. Do we have any other business, staff? Dan?
Dan, do you
Anything
know
else?
whether we have a meeting next month?
I turn it back over to Frank.
So we do have 2 cases for next month. We will send you all the details at least 2 weeks prior, hopefully that Friday, not this coming Friday, but the Friday after, where you get the case informations and details. We do plan on Boone and Mac inviting, or we're having a little kind of seminar for going over the criteria for variance approval and denial. So at some point in the meeting, possibly before, around 12 o'clock, we'll have Boone and Mac speak to the board members
I'm
about.
sorry, was this going to be after the meeting next month or?
This will be before the meeting next month.
Before next, okay.
They're trying to educate us before we make another
Thanks.
mistake.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
The
adjourn.
date of that meeting would be the 19th, is that right?
That's
Or the
correct.
12th?
19th.
The
Okay.
19th?
So, okay, we adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your input.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I could just ask,